This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community, episode 136. I'm Nancy Ree.
And I'm Harold Ree.
Today's guests are Youngman Brown and Catherine O'Brien.
But I wanted like a boy dog that was a little bit bigger, like kind of like a man dog. But that wasn't the case because when he brought her to me, it was like 10 minutes and I was just in love.
We're excited today to have two guests. First, we start with Mr. Youngman Brown, host of Your Creative Push. He has a wonderful story of how his rescue dog, of all things, helped him find his wife.
I commented on one of them and I was like, oh my gosh, our dogs look similar. Because they are the same like size and they do kind of like act a little bit the same. And I was just like, oh, like our dogs are like kind of the same. And then from that, we actually started talking. And that's how I found Jess. That's how we reconnected.
Maybe you've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian or a writer or a painter or maybe even a podcaster. Well, you listen to a few episodes of his show and you'll be inspired to pick up that pen or pick up that paintbrush or that microphone and start creating. We also have Catherine O'Brien, previous guest. We actually met Catherine and I in Anaheim, California at a podcasting convention, and it's great to catch up with her on podcasting and animal rescue. But first, let's talk a little bit about the Bay Area Pet Fair, the largest pet adoption event in California. We were pleased to have Mr. Mike Murray on the show a couple episodes ago, and Nancy and I look forward to meeting some of you out there. There's over 70 rescue groups who are going to be there. We're going to be walking the grounds of the Alameda County Fairgrounds, spending some time with hopefully each of them to record a little bit about what their organization does and maybe pick up some other cool animal stories. I just thought we'd use the next two episodes to really highlight the amazing animal rescue organizations involved. So first, let's talk about House Rabbit Society. They'll be bringing some cute, cuddly animals to the Bay Area Pet Fair. And in case you don't know what House Rabbit Society is, as their philosophy states, the House Rabbit Society believes that all rabbits are valuable as individuals, regardless of breed, temperament, state of health, or relationship to humans. The welfare of all rabbits is our primary consideration. So maybe you haven't seen a rabbit in a long time. Well, make sure to stop by House Rabbit Society's booth. Next, we have DPS Rescue, which stands for Doggy Protective Services. I believe they're based in Romoland, California, so Riverside, California, but they have a presence all over the state. They've been around since 2001, volunteer-driven, and they rescue dogs of all breeds, ages, and sizes. They also rescue cats. In total, they've placed over 12,000 dogs in forever homes since our inception. So that's amazing. In 16 years, 12,000 dogs and cats. So they tend to pull their animals from approximately 30 shelters in California. They also have partnerships in Korea to save dogs from dog farms. So not only do they have a California focus, but they also have an international focus, saving some dogs from Korea. So thank you, Doggy Protective Services, and we'll see you at the Bay Area Pet Fair. Do you know what a Maine Coon cat is? Well, you should. And if you want to check out these lovely felines, stop by the booth for Maine Coon Adoptions. Maine Coon Adoptions rescue cats from all over California, mainly from high-kill animal shelters, as well as from colleagues who find cats in their TNR, that's Trap, Neuter, Return projects, or simply Good Samaritans who have taken in abandoned cats. Maine Coon cats are often known as the dogs of the cat world. If you want to learn more, make sure to stop by Maine Coon Adoptions. Rhodey's Rescue has been around since 2016. They're an all-volunteer organization focusing on dogs from shelters in Contra Costa County, the city of Antioch, and San Joaquin County. You never know, Rhodey's just might have the dog for you. So make sure to stop by Rhodey's Rescue's booth at the Bay Area Pet Fair. The Humane Society of the North Bay. They're based in Vallejo, California, and they help in Solano County. Humane Society of the North Bay is a private, non-profit corporation established in 1986. They used to be known as the Benicia Vallejo Humane Society. They just celebrated their 30th anniversary, so make sure to stop by the booth of the Humane Society of the North Bay. If you want to take a look at more animals and rescue organizations, go to bayareapetfair.org. Well, as we mentioned, we have Youngman Brown on the show. He's the host of Your Creative Push, and he has a great story of how he met his wife through his rescue dog. What is the big lesson you're trying to teach people through this podcast? Like, what's your why?
To just start. I think that's the number one thing. If you get an idea, if you have this idea, don't let it stew in your head, because I think the longer you let these ideas stew in your head, the faster that the resistances, the doubts, the fears can creep in and start to eat that idea away. And you can start to see the bad things that could potentially happen. Pretty much none of those ideas are real. Like if you say write something and post it online, if you do photography, if you paint a picture and post it and share it, nobody is going to laugh at you. If they do, they have issues. They are the person with the problem, like they're just a troll, and that's their art form, is just to latch on and to try to get a rise out of people. However, the people in general are nice people. They're sweethearts. And people online in general, except for maybe YouTube, are very kind people. So if you share your stuff, maybe you'll get some critiques. Probably not, though. Mostly it's just going to be people that support you. People are going to like it. And if they don't like it, they're just going to move on to the next thing. They're not going to hate on you. So I think a lot of these imaginary things that we get in our mind that hold us back from just starting to just jump into a creative passion, those are the things that I want to try to dispel, and to just stop listening to the podcast and just start getting to work.
When it comes to creativity, whether it's writer's block, painter's block, all these different ways, what makes it a little different for creative people? It's not necessarily just procrastinating, right? I mean, there's something more to it, or there can be more to it.
Sure, yeah. I think that procrastination is like one of the main things, but I think a lot of things come into that. And one of the big ones is like imposter syndrome. Like the reason that you're not doing it is you're afraid that you don't have the authority to do it, or you feel like perhaps your parents have told you growing up that, a creative field, you won't make money. So you have to go down this other path. There's tons of things that hold people back from doing something. And it's the interesting thing is, like, procrastination comes up a lot. Imposter syndrome comes up a lot. A lot of these same resistances come up all the time, these same fears. However, hearing the individual stories of why these things came up in different people, they're always unique. And then how they got past them, it's always a different story. So that's what I didn't think that this podcast would last over 200 episodes, but every single time I talk to somebody, it's always a new story, which is always interesting. And that's why people that listen can really gain something from it. Perhaps they have gone through a similar thing, and then they can also help to get over it.
When you speak about your own creativity, I mean, can you share a little bit about what are some of the things that you've gone through beyond Words Plus Music? Anything else that any other struggles that you've had?
Yeah. With my writing, a lot of fears of, like, is my mom going to read this? So, like, being honest, like being like truly honest is one of the things that I think people should do in general, but especially in your art, in your creative passion. So with my writing, to be fully honest and put yourself out there like that is super scary. And I think I'm usually not I'm kind of an introvert as well, which is strange, but it seems like a lot of podcasters are introverts. Like, I get sweaty, like, talking about myself. I get sweaty even before this interview. I was super nervous, once you get into it, you get used to it, and it becomes a little bit easier. But I think it's important to remember that these things that hold you back, like, don't always go away. Like, you're not just going to become an extrovert if you create 200 podcast episodes. It gets easier at public speaking, and it gets easier to kind of control your thoughts and be able to put yourself out there. But these things don't go away. To go into your creative passion or go into whatever it is, knowing that these artists that have been doing this for 20, 30 years still have these same resistances, these same things that hold them back. It's really inspiring to know that when you're going through it, you're always going to encounter them. So yeah, for me, the imposter syndrome and also laziness also comes in, and then being really honest, like I said. And the way I got by that was just by practicing, just by doing it, and putting it out there, and then, like, literally emailing it to my mom to ask her to proofread it. That's like, there's no better way to do that than that.
I think the best times are when we just simply make room, right? No matter how busy we are, in reality, we probably could actually spend that extra hour or two working on our creative passion.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the story that you tell yourself, and something that you can really do is analyze your time. Like literally get a journal and write down what you do, like split it up into like 30-minute increments throughout your day, and just do that for like a week, and just really kind of graph out all the time that you are spending either sleeping, napping, watching TV. For me, one of my big things is playing with my dogs too much. I just love staring at them. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but
yeah.
like, and that's a good thing. Like that's like something that's necessary. But if you find that you're watching, every TV show, really ask yourself, is that something that you want to be like in 30 years, or on your deathbed, you want to be like, I watched all the shows. Like I didn't miss an episode of Breaking Bad. I didn't miss an episode of Game of Thrones. Perhaps those are two shows that you should actually be proud of watching. But I'm just talking about like, just really analyze like, what do these things that you do on a daily basis, what do they do for you in the long run? And do you have these pressing goals? Perhaps like you don't, like, and that's fine. Like not everybody's creative, and not everybody wants to go down this like creative path and create a creative journey for themselves and create something tangible that they can hold out. That's not for everybody. Some people just want to have fun. Yeah. That's fine. That's a perfect way to live life and whatever. But if you do have these goals, these ideas that you've had for a year, 2 years, a decade that you just haven't got to, you're going to get to one day. Really ask yourself, are you going to get to that one day, or are you just kind of pushing it off until never? And are you going to regret not doing that thing? And if that's the truth, then you got to find those micro minutes, those half-hour blocks, even 10 minutes a day, to get to your writing, get to your photography, get to your creative passion. Even if it's not a passion yet, even if it's something you want to learn. And I know that seems like a mountain to learn something new, but like I said, like it can be really fun to learn how to do something new. So even if it is something that you've never done before, but you have this idea that maybe I want to produce music one day, start to learn. Like there's free resources out there, and at least start to watch a video to better yourself. 10 minutes a day, that's all it takes just to get started. And you might find that you won't even think about watching that show anymore, because you're so engrossed in what you're doing and you have these new goals and aspirations. It's just dive in.
Yeah. Okay. We're speaking to Youngman Brown. He's host of Your Creative Push, a wonderful podcast to me about creativity, about the creative process, about really just overcoming a lot of obstacles that creative people face. What's the feedback been from your listenership?
A great question, and that's the thing that keeps me going. That's like my currency, is when I get an email, or even you at the top of this interview saying that you listen to it, that it inspires you. That's like what drives me, to hear those stories. And if I can just affect one person, get them to get past their creative blocks, or save like 2 or 3 years from their life, to their creative life, to get to their creative passion, that's what it's all about. I've received a great response, and it like just warms my heart to see that people are affected by this. And we just created a Facebook group too, and to see the interaction between the people, then like it's amazing, because you can, I mean, I'm sure you have this experience too. You have your download numbers, you see that people are watching it, you see that more and more people are jumping on and watching it, but that's just like a number. So when you can actually like talk to somebody and interact with somebody, or get a message from somebody, or somebody comments on Instagram about how the show affected them, that's amazing. Like that's what it's all about.
Well, let's switch to your own personal story with animals. Can you tell us a little bit about the animals in your life?
Yay! Yeah, of course. So I have 2 dogs, Sadie and Vixie, and Vixie just perked up her head because she's sitting with me right now. Vixie is my wife's dog. That we got them about the same time, about 6 months before we met, which was probably 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago. Vixie is not a rescue, but she's a lovely dog. She's a Chihuahua Maltese. And then Sadie is my dog, and she is a rescue. I rescued her. We didn't go through any kind of process, which was actually like a kind of an interesting thing. Like I thought that there was like much more like paperwork involved, and not just like you find a dog and you can take them and make sure that nobody owns them, and then if nobody claims them, you can just keep them. It's like kind of an amazing thing. But anyway, I used to play poker for a living. That was like my previous thing, and actually my full-time gig now is a poker dealer. But back when online poker actually got banned in the United States, so most of my friends left the country to various places, and I decided to not continue with that and just become a dealer in the States. We used to spend our summers out in Las Vegas, and the summer after online poker got banned in the US, I was off doing my own thing on the East Coast, and my buddies were out in Vegas, and a dog showed up on their doorstep. They thought it was a boy dog, and she was emaciated, and she was very, very scared, but she was at their like doorstep for like 2 days in a row. So they let her in, fed her, gave her water, cleaned her up, and then tried to find out if she had a home, and she didn't. She didn't have a tag or anything like that. But all of my friends were dispersing, and they didn't know what to do with this dog. And actually, as a last-ditch effort, my buddy reached out to me on the East Coast. He lives in Baltimore, and at that point, I was in Philly. But he drove across the country to bring the dog to me, because he had to anyway before he left to go to, I think, Colombia. So he drove this dog over to me, and I was like, all right, we'll just do it on a kind of a trial basis. I did want a dog, but I wanted like a boy dog that was a little bit bigger, like kind of like a man dog. But that wasn't the case, because when he brought her to me, it was like 10 minutes and I was just in love.
Oh, wow.
She just jumped up in my lap and just kind of slept there.
So what does Sadie look like?
So she's a Chihuahua Terrier, we think. So she has like this like coarse coarse hair, and she's full of energy, but she's still scared of other dogs and kind of other humans, but mostly like kids. So I'm not sure exactly what happened to her in the past, but it was probably something a little bit traumatic. But she has warmed up to Vixie. They are best friends now. And she's still, when we take them to the dog park, Vixie is out running around, having a great time with the other dogs, and Sadie kind of just sticks by me. And I try to get her to interact with the other dogs, but we're working on it.
Okay. What makes Sadie special to you?
Sadie came to me at a time where I was alone. I was thinking about getting a dog, but like on the dating front, man, I was striking out. Like I was just very lonely. And Sadie came at like the perfect time, as I think a lot of these stories do with a lot of your previous guests and just, people in general. It's like these little things find us at like the perfect time. They become our buddy. They become our pal. They become our like partner in crime, So Sadie came to me at like the when I was at a kind of a low point, especially like I was like, am I ever going to find a woman to like spend the rest of my life with? And then it was actually, I guess after I got her, like I said, about 5 or 6 months, Jess, my wife, she posted pictures of Vixie that she had just gotten around the same time I got Sadie, and I liked one of her posts or something, and then I commented on one of them, and I was like, oh my gosh, our dogs look similar, because they are the same like size, and they do kind of like act a little bit the same, and I was just like, oh, like our dogs are like kind of the same. And then from that, we actually started talking, and that's how I found Jess. Like that's how we reconnected. Like I said, we went to college together, but we didn't talk at all for 5-6 years. We really didn't talk much in college, actually. So in a way, our dogs brought us together, which is like kind of heartwarming, But yeah, it's true. And then our dogs actually didn't like each other. When we went on our second date, we introduced the two dogs to each other. And they didn't like each other. Sadie was so scared of Vixie, but they eventually warmed up. But I thought that was going to be a deal breaker.
Unbelievable. And how long have you been married?
2.5 years now.
All right, so, awesome.
Yeah, she's the love of my life, and now I love Vixie. I have these 3 amazing girls in my life.
There you go. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. How would you say marriage, bringing together a family, not only of people, but of dogs, how has that changed your thoughts on the creative process?
Ooh, interesting. Well, I have a lot more material to write about. I certainly have a lot of stories with my wife and my dogs, but it's made me more of a human, I'd say. It's made me realize what's important to me, and not creatively, actually. I don't want kids anymore. We always talk about how we're like so happy with our dogs, and we just want more dogs. We want all the dogs. I don't know if we're gonna have kids anymore. Maybe we'll start rescuing dogs too. Oh, and one thing that I would advise people to do is not go to a dog shelter if you are positive that you can't take another dog in. Because for some reason, like 3 months ago, we went to the dog shelter just to look. And we fell in love with this dog.
Right, you were trapped. It's the shelter.
Oh, my
trap,
God.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Kia this beautiful dog. She just loved us for some, oh man, I don't know why we did it. So then we made a deal. We're like, all right, like we can't take another dog. We don't have enough space and we're always traveling. Like we always have to figure out like what to do with our dogs. We have to bring them with us and then have either her parents or my parents watch them. So we were like, all right, if Kia isn't taken in 3 days, we'll take her. But then we called like 2 days later and she was taken. And it was like, we both cried. We're like, it was like a sad thing, but like also like a really happy thing for Kia, you know?
Absolutely.
But oh man, definitely don't go to the shelter until you're ready. Or even if you're like 20% ready, then you can do it. But if you're like 100% can't do it, don't do it.
Okay. Youngman Brown with the shelter confessions. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. I've read some of your writing. I find it very funny. If someone were to say, hey, you know, show us your writing, what's it all about? How would you describe your writing?
I guess like self-deprecating. It's like trying to find the humor and the I don't know, the interesting moments in everyday life. Because I don't have a terribly interesting life, but it's trying to find the humor and trying to find a way to bring that out. I would say that you might get a laugh, you might just learn something, but it's basically just for fun. And that's the other important thing is like I realized when I first started writing, I had all these expectations. And I think a lot of creative people that I've talked to have had this same experience where you have all these, before you even put pen to paper, you have all these thoughts about what this piece of writing is going to represent, what people will think about it, and where this will lead you in your creative career, and will this take off? And to just kind of get all those questions out of your head and just do it for you. Like do it because it's fun and do it because you're able to get a piece of you out of there. And I think that the podcast has really taught me a lot about that, to take all that pressure off of yourself before you start and to just do it for you, to just do it because that's the way that you're able to put yourself out there, especially if you're an introvert. That's the way you're able to get what's inside of you out into the world. For people in the animal rescue world, there's always an interesting way to differentiate yourself. And I don't mean differentiate yourself in the way that like you're competing with anybody else, but seeing what other people are doing to effectively shelter a dog, to effectively find a home for any animal, and copying that way. Try to find something unique. If you get an idea, like I kind of mentioned it before, like writing a story from the animal's perspective and only the way that you can, because you're the one that's interacted with this animal, to really, because you care so much to do this thing, to take these animals and to try to find them a home. Like obviously you have a heart for this. Obviously this is your passion. So to try to find a way to creatively get that out there, to do that for the animal, whether it's, you know, telling their story in only the way that you can, to tell a personal story, that an interaction that you had with them, to not be afraid to really be unique. One of the things that I found with like the animals that you share, with animals that a lot of your guests have shared, is that when they share it on social media, a lot of the comments are, you know, oh, so cute. Oh, hopefully this works out. Half of them are like that. And half of them are just one person tagging another person to kind of show them this animal. And so if you're able to tell that story in a way, like with photography, with writing, with any kind of creative, like maybe making a wonderful website that makes it easy to navigate, to be able to share that story and to tell that unique story in a very specific way, so that it kind of clicks something in the viewer's mind, either for them or for somebody that they know, a connection that they make with a human that might be a great match with this animal, to increase those just comments where it's just one person sharing to another. I think just trying to find those unique ways, that they're really perfect. And I mean, your podcast is all about inspiring people to do something about this very specific thing. So our podcasts are really very, very much the same. So if you're able to find that unique way that only you can share about this special animal in your life, to share it with somebody else.
Great points. Great points. Juggling, now you're a husband, you have your regular job, you have your writing, you have your podcasting. How do you try to balance all that?
That's one of the toughest things.
Right.
Yeah, it's something I'm still kind of struggling with, and something that whenever I ask my guests questions, that's the one question where I'm like, I almost ask it in a desperate way, like, how do you do it? like, how can I do it? I think it's just trial and error and seeing what works. And a lot of it is a bit of sacrifice. You do have to sacrifice I used to watch all the TV shows, like I said, and you do kind of miss that. Like whenever people are talking about this amazing new show and like you add it to your queue that you'll watch one day. But I'd rather those things, like the one day, be like TV shows that I'll watch one day rather than the things that I want to do to push my life forward in the way that I want to. The one kind of tragic thing about the whole starting a podcast thing is I love it so much that it really made me realize how much I don't like my actual job. And I think that could have come naturally. But I think a lot of times when you have a job that you don't like, you kind of push that aside, those thoughts aside, because that's like kind of the only thing that you have going on. And that's the way you need to make money. But now that I've introduced this other thing that I know I could maybe potentially one day like monetize in some way, the wheels start to really turn, and you start to think, wow, there is actually an escape plan. And so for me, that's something I'm struggling with right now is like, I feel like every time I'm at work, even though I'm making money, I am wasting time, like time that I could be spending towards the podcast or towards my writing. Now my writing has been a little bit sacrificed. Like I don't write as much. This weekend, I actually got back to my creative passions, which was amazing, but the podcast has taken over a lot of time. So it really is just like knowing yourself, trying to find ways, like I said, scheduling out stuff before to see where all your time is going. And if there are things that are expendable, expend them.
Thanks, Youngman, for sharing your story. If you want to learn more about Youngman Brown and your creative push, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/136. Now I catch up with Catherine O'Brien. She's the host of the Pawcast, which is a podcast based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and it supports Friends of the Animals Baton Rouge, a local rescue organization who recently won a pedigree award of $25,000 to assist with heartworm treatment, which is a serious issue in Louisiana. And they do a wonderful job of rescuing a variety of dogs, many of whom are featured on Catherine's Pawcast. Well, as I mentioned before, we're in Anaheim, California meeting up, and here's our conversation. I'm Harold Ree with the Paw Print Animal Rescue Podcast.
And I'm Catherine O'Brien with the Pawcast of Friends of the Animals Baton Rouge.
And we are in Anaheim, California, beautiful Anaheim, California, actually in the Anaheim Marriott.
Ooh la la.
As the podcast movement conference in 2017 has just wrapped up.
I think it was a great experience, Harold. This is our first time meeting in person, which was really great. It was really a fun part of going to Podcast Movement. And what a week we've had.
It was a lot of information, a lot of content, some inspiration, and I'm pretty beat. I'm pretty tired.
Me too. But it's like that good kind of beat where it's like we kind of earned it because we went to so many amazing presentations and really just got as much as we could out of the conference.
Absolutely. What were some of your highlights from the conference?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the best highlights that I experienced was from Edison Research. They do a lot of not only political polling, but they are doing really in-depth research about podcast and what they call the share of ear. You can do with what you want with that name of that study, but really they're trying to see who and how people are consuming their information. And let me tell you, podcasting is on the rise, and it's a really exciting time because there's so much opportunity for podcasters, podcasting, the content that can be delivered. It's really feels like something exciting is happening.
Right. I think to me, and I don't know if Edison actually covered this, it might have been another session I went to, but one of the big stats right now is that the average ownership of a car is about 11 or 12 years. Well, if you think about that, most of those cars only have radios, maybe CD players. Now, eventually, when the next generation of cars gets purchased by whether it's you, me, or whomever, those new cars are going to be more podcast ready. In fact, maybe some of them it'll be easier to play a podcast than it will be to listen to a radio station. So that could be another big inflection point.
Yes, and all related to that is the advent of smart speakers. And that has been really a buzz here, is that people talking about our Alexa devices, Google Home, all of these smart speakers. That's going to be a way that people get to podcasting, and it seemed like that was like we're really starting at the forefront of that.
Agreed. Totally. I mean, it's amazing. But I would say in some ways podcast movement, right, has preceded that growth in the sense that there were tons of podcasts 3 years ago. And so it just shows that in a lot of ways we have been on the cutting edge, maybe not starting the wave, but we've been riding that wave.
We're in the wave.
Right. We are.
We are safely in the wave.
We're in the wave. Yeah. Anaheim is not near the water, but we are close enough. What did you think about your sessions? Now, you were both a panelist on a session for geolocal podcasting, as well as a facilitator / moderator. What was your thoughts?
Well, it was an honor and a pleasure to talk about local podcasting. So since Pawcast is focused to the Baton Rouge area, although we get listeners from all over the place, but our focus is Baton Rouge, what's going on with adoptable dogs in our community, as well as Friends of the Animals, a specific organization that is serving that need in our community. And it was great to talk to other people who saw the potential of having a show that is really talking to a very tight niche, or niche if you want, that I have a really specific mission. I want to tell people about adoptable dogs in my community, and I want to do it in a really happy, engaging, fun way. And it was great to talk to other people who have ideas and dreams of being of service with podcasting to their communities as well. So that was just fantastic.
Yeah. Just to let you know, Catherine did an awesome job.
Thanks, Harold.
You can actually see a video on the Paw Print Facebook page. And I think what was really cool, especially for geolocal, mainly because that's the one I actually saw Catherine in, was the fact that, once again, Edison Research, all these other folks, what are we hearing? It's that while radio is still the gorilla, they're still number one, podcasting is really nipping at the heels. And if podcasting can start taking over local, radio will really start to lose its flavor, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Harold, I know that you went to a lot of sessions about storytelling. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned about that and what we might see in Paw Print that came from those sessions?
Yeah, I think when you think about who comes here, right, it could be a business podcast. It could be a creative podcast. It could be a news podcast, right? Because a lot of folks listen to news-oriented podcasts. And I think the theme I got from some sessions was story is everything. The one thing that one of the speakers mentioned, and this was talking about the actor Philip Seymour Hoffman, who of course is no longer with us, but he was actually literally friends with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He actually knew his younger brother, or I think he was a younger brother of his best friend. And he literally said to Philip Seymour Hoffman, I need to learn as much about acting, about your career as much as possible. And he literally said Philip Seymour Hoffman gave him 2 words of advice, and that was all he gave him, which was simply be memorable. And I thought that was, as of course the sets are being torn down, it sounds like the Anaheim Marriott's about to collapse on us. But I think story is super important, that when it comes to the Paw Print Animal Rescue podcast, I think we are telling stories. But maybe the challenge is, are we telling them in a way that's memorable? And just bottom line, are we truly memorable? Yeah. Because that's ultimately how you truly spread a positive message of animal rescue is, can you make an impact that not only it affects the volunteers and the folks who you might naturally think listen to you, but someone who has no idea what animal rescue is, would they listen to our podcast and say, wow, that really inspired me? At this point, I don't know the answer to that question. So thanks for asking that.
I know that I certainly got a lot of great feedback just talking, saying, oh, yeah, I have a podcast for my charity of choice, Friends of the Animals Baton Rouge. And the look on people's face was like, oh, that's such a great idea. Did you get similar response from people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was always a good icebreaker because, out of 1,000, let's say 1,500 people here in the audience, there's maybe you, me, and I don't know, 2 other people who had animal rescue oriented podcasts. So it is sort of like a little bit jarring to folks, but definitely in a positive way. And I'd say half the folks I spoke to said, "Oh, I have a dog or cat who's a rescue animal."
It was kind of for me, it was a nice confirmation of like just the impact that animals have on our lives, and that they are truly members of our family. And it was just nice to see sort of like almost like the wheels turning with people saying, "Oh, that would be such a great podcast to listen to. It's something I love, and it's such a big part of my life." And then to be able to have a podcast with it too. That's right. It was neat to see that.
Is there going outside of animal rescue? Is there a podcast that you discovered that you actually might listen to?
Oh, so this is my 3rd time at Podcast Movement. I have a whole page of notes of just podcasts that now I got to listen to.
Was there one that really stood out?
Well, you see, I don't want to name drop until I actually listen because I don't want to. Let's keep our expectations moderated.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'll share that. Actually, one that I learned about was the Podcast Report. Now, it's probably a little bit on the geekier, nerdier side.
Keep talking,
as you might imagine. The Podcast Report. It's a very sexy title, but his session was interesting. As you and I talked about before we started interviewing each other, was the whole home speaker trend. Whether it's your Amazon Echo. And it was funny because he kept on calling it the Amazon Alexa. So it's like Mr. Nerd can't even get the name of
Even I said Alexa.
Right, yeah. So it's the Amazon Echo, and then you have the Apple HomePod, and then you have the Google Home. And essentially he was saying, listen, forget about your iPhone, forget about your car, although those are still going to be super important. But as these 3 devices get better and better and better, you're simply going to be saying into your home speaker, pull up the podcast, pull up Paw Print Animal Rescue Podcast or whatever podcast you want. And if we're not ready for that to happen, when they say, I want to hear the podcast with Catherine O'Brien, if they can't find it, then we've just lost that person, maybe forever. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anything else?
No, I can't think of anything else. Well, one thing before we wrap, I do want to. Another thing that was very clear throughout so many of the presentations that I heard was that podcast listeners are passionate about podcasts and they listen to a lot of shows. And I just am so grateful to all the people who take the time. They're investing in the show with their ears, that they take their time to listen to the podcast. And it's sort of like a nice reminder to be grateful for the audience that we have.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you to all the listeners, because once again, I mean, even Catherine and I were talking about some of the podcasts that we've listened to. It's what we probably listen to anywhere from 10 to 20 different podcasts. Some folks probably listen to 50 to 100 different podcasts. And it's like, for them to even choose animal rescue as one of their passions, something that we can hopefully support with our voices and with our guests, that's pretty inspiring.
Yeah.
So,
and I can confidently say, listen to Paw Print, listen to the podcast. We thank you for joining us.
And finally, every time Catherine O'Brien says the word podcast, she actually makes with her left hand a little paw. So I told her to change the name of the podcast to the cat fight.
No.
Because then you can use both hands.
Right. But I'm all dogs.
Okay. Well, signing off from Anaheim, this is Harold Ree.
This is Catherine O'Brien.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Youngman. And thank you to the Bay Area Pet Fair. If you want to learn more about all these wonderful people and rescue organizations, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/136. If you want to listen to more episodes of Paw Print, find us on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple Podcasts. Make sure to search for Paw Print Animal Rescue and hit the subscribe button to get the latest episodes immediately. On our next episode, we feature author and previous guest Paul Griffin, who's coming out with a brand new book called Saving Marty. If you're a film buff, you'll know who he's referring to with the name Marty. His book launches on Tuesday, September 19th, and you can hear him on our next episode. All the wonderful music you hear on Paw Print is composed, produced, and performed by the amazing Luke Gardner-Brereton. If you want to find him online, go to info.vanillagroovemedia.com. If you're in the Bay Area, make sure to stop by our booth at the Bay Area Pet Fair, or simply just look for us. I'll be the nerd wearing headphones and carrying around a microphone. Just want to say thanks to everyone for sharing Paw Print with your friends and family. We're now at 136 episodes, and we couldn't have done it without your support. So thanks again. And remember, you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Paw Print.
Is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.